Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Um, let's see. What's the book? I was born. No, I'm not gonna go. Don't fear. I'm not gonna go into that kind of detail. Um, anyway, I'm a Southern girl. I was born in Birmingham, and I grew up there. And I got married. Uh, I'm just telling you a little bit of biography to set you up for what when I became a Unitarian. Um, I got married in 1965, and we immediately got out of Alabama because if you remember the 60s, Birmingham was not a good place you wanted to be. I was so repelled by what I saw with Martin Luther King. I always go out on Martin Luther King Day because I have vivid memories of seeing him
Hmm.
uh, and seeing how Birmingham reacted. But it was during the 60s. So Don and I got out of there as quick as we could and moved to Iowa for a year and then to Nebraska. And I had two kids along the way, a son and a daughter. And while we were raising them, 1973 came around. And that is when I became a Unitarian Universalist. And I almost feel this is not exciting, folks. This is how most people go back to religion. You get into college, you find out a little bit, and you think, oh, wow, I can't do this anymore. Because I grew up a Southern Baptist. And I was asking questions when I was about 16 because I was a science nerd. And I started asking questions, and I didn't like the answers I got. Nobody ever addressed any of my issues. It was just, you got to have faith, Pat. If you have faith, you won't ask these questions. And I officially left the Baptist church when I was 18 during a meeting of they call them young people's meetings on Wednesday nights. Those of you who might have grown up in a fundamentalist church, this will sound familiar. Anyway, we were sitting around talking about some kind of scripture or something we were required to read. And I popped up and said I thought it was really the craziest thing I'd ever heard for people to say that all those people who died not a Christian in Africa, their blood was on my hands. And I spoke up and said that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. The Sunday school leader did not like that, and she announced to the whole group that my big problem was that I read too much.
Oh my.
That was when I decided I could not go to the Baptist church anymore, and that was in the 60s, and I can tell you that they just kept becoming more and more fundamentalist. They weren't even that fundamentalist when I was a Baptist. It just kept getting worse and worse as the years went by. So I didn't go to church for years. I mean, between 1960 and 73, 13 years, I didn't go to any church, no religion. And of course, when you're raising your kids, you have a lot to do. So, and I was working and going, and then I started back to graduate school. Anyway, the kids got to be about three or four, and even in Nebraska, the kids say, "What church do you go to?" And so Di and I decided we really did need to take our kids to church, and so we started looking around, and we discovered it's not called Unitarian Universalist. In fact, in Lincoln, Nebraska, it is still called Unitarian
Hmm.
because the Unitarians and the Universalists did not merge until 1961, and then they took both the names. Um, and that's how I got to the church, and I became active, and I've been there ever since. I don't know. We joined the church in Lincoln, and then in 1986 we moved here, and I joined the congregation here because there was just no other church. We have a thing when we start every Sunday that says we believe in deeds, not creeds, and we don't have any creeds. Um, you can't be a Nazi and be a Unitarian, but you can have just about any theology, and we will welcome you. Um, we're known for tolerance, and I think that's the reason I became a Unitarian more than anything, is that nobody told you you couldn't ask those questions, and science is a big deal. After the Episcopalians and the Unitarians are just about the most educated church populations in this country, and I think and it's the kind of thing that they value education and they value science, and so I've always felt right at home. I felt like that was my place. I found my church, and it's a community. I could not survive in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm very liberal, in case you hadn't already guessed. Uh, and I could not survive in Columbia, South Carolina, if it weren't for the Unitarian Church. Um, I'm active in the League of Women Voters and the Art Museum and stuff like that. But those are just secondary communities. My main community is Unitarian.
Hmm.
And uh, when I joined, most of the Unitarians were humanist. Right now, they're all over the map. We've got atheists, we've got agnostics, we've got Jewish Unitarians, Catholic Unitarians. A lot of people, they call us the island of misfit toys because they come from every different background and they're escapees in a lot of cases. They're coming from fundamentalist churches and they were literally, well, maybe not literally, but they were chased out. They felt like they were chased out of their religion and they come over to us. So we have a real variety. Um, I became a religious humanist several years ago, and that's mainly where I still am. Um, there's three humanist manifestos. The first one was signed by 17 Unitarian ministers. So Unitarians have always been big in humanist. They're humanists. You don't even hear people talk about humanists anymore, unless it's the president talking about secular humanists being every evil. But anyway, the humanist. I guess I describe myself more as a pantheist than
Hmm.
anything else because I really do think nature is where I find my spirituality.
Oh,
So
we
I'm
have
gonna
that in
stop.
common.
I don't want to bore people to death, Holly. I'm gonna stop.
Oh, you're anything but boring, Pat. So, can you explain what you mean by humanist for those who may not be as familiar?
Oh, well, you hear the term secular humanist a lot, and that's people that don't treat it as a religion. But humanism believes that people are not born in sin, that they are born basically tabula rasa, but for good, that humanity at its core is good.
Hmm.
It's like Anne Frank would probably, if she weren't Jewish, would have been a humanist. Uh, because they believe in the goodness of people. They believe that we can organize ourselves and live civilized in a civilized way. And it's tolerance. It's live and let live. It's using reason and rationality as your main way to find knowledge.
Hmm.
Epistemology is the search how you find knowledge, and people have different epistemologies. Most of us have probably had too much education, but we rely on reason and rationality to find the answers to most things. Uh, that's why I'm interested in what you guys have to say because when you get to religion, it's hard to go there. Humanists
Yeah,
do.
ask me in a minute.
Yeah.
I want to come back to this, the reason and humanist, and uh, yeah, I want to tell you about some things I've been asked before and put on the spot in front of people. Well, then, shall I jump in and share a little bit of my biography? And
Sure.
at least a few of you here tonight already know this stuff, so thank you for your patience in listening again. I was always a little bit of an odd child, and I loved to spend time in the woods and outside and just lying in the grass looking at the stars. I would sit and stare at the ground for a long time and see what all I could find there. One time I did find an arrowhead. So my mother used to tease me and say I was St. Francis out talking to the animals. Since I was raised Lutheran, I had no idea who St. Francis was. But somewhere along the way, and I celebrated the first Earth Day. What was that, 68, I think? I was a middle schooler and I took stuff to school. Everybody thought I was even crazier than before, but the environment, nature, anything to do with the outdoors was real important to me at that time. But then that Jesus hippie movement swept the country, and it swept me up with it. And suddenly there was a place I belonged, and it was very happy. It was not, it sort of morphed into something different over years. I don't want to put down anybody's religion, because there are still a lot of people that find happiness there. But as you say, there are also some of us who experienced it as controlling and abusive. So it took me a bad marriage to spit me out of that. Excuse me. But I did learn a lot about community. I've also been part of the Episcopal Church. As I said, I was raised Lutheran. In fact, I'm descended from the person who helped save Martin Luther's life ages ago. Just in case anybody here went to seminary, he was Junker George, and he's the one that Luther pretended to be for 3 years while he hid out and did most of his writing there. So strong Lutheran heritage there, but not the very ultra conservative Lutherans of the Midwest. And then, like I said, that Jesus movement swept the country. I came home one day and told my mother I'd been saved, and she said, "Saved from what?" And then the next time I had a little confrontation, I said, "I want to be baptized." She said, "You were baptized when you were 6 days old." So I was too young and not wise enough yet to know, just give it a few more months, Holly. You can be out of the house. You can do whatever you want to. As I said, I eventually got spit out of that in a bad divorce. I kept telling people, or telling myself, don't blame God for what his people do. But, eventually you kind of feel kicked around. So eventually I stumbled into the New Age community, and from there into the Unitarian Universalist congregation. And I was there for about 10 years. Learned a lot, had some good experiences. It wasn't really where I needed to settle for good. I found, because they were a client at one time, I was the one straight person, and then my husband joined with me, or when we got married, the Metropolitan Community Church. So we were the only straight people in this gay church. Again, that was really an incredible experience. They were real open. The whole denomination was not that way, but the congregation here was more of sort of Matthew Fox spirituality, and it was just the most accepting place I had ever been. And yet I was, in a way, the outsider. So I learned a lot of life lessons about how we filter each other's identities. And eventually, my friends there and I agreed. I had been moving towards identifying as a pagan for a long time, and it was time to just, go ahead and put my time into that. So I left it, but it was a friendly parting, and I've been a practicing pagan ever since then. I, went to some Wicca classes for a while. That wasn't quite for me. I've kind of been around the block there, but eventually had to admit that I was had some kind of drawing to ancient Egypt. And I kept being embarrassed about it. I thought, yeah, everybody wants to be Cleopatra in a past life. But I really did have some experiences that pulled me that way. And I eventually, when I started finally reading and doing some Egyptology studies, and I have learned to crudely read and translate hieroglyphs at this point. It really does nourish me spiritually. So I'm what within paganism we refer to as Kemeticism, because Kemet was the ancient name of the country. But I find spirit, or the divine, or whatever you want to call whatever it is that we're all part of that's beyond us, I find it everywhere. And paganism is just a big blanket term. It's really out of the Religious Studies Academy. It's an umbrella. There are all kinds of paganisms, just like there are all kinds of Christianity. In fact, Pat, I'm sure you know, the Unitarian Universalism, if you saw a tree, like a genealogy of religions, UUism is in that Christian branch of the tree.
Yeah, UUs
Although,
were the heretics, starting back in 325. They've been heretics because they didn't believe in the Trinity. They believed there was only one God, which is where Unitarians started. So
Mm-hmm.
it's an old religion. It's been around a long time, but they used to be known as the Christian heretics.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and back to the humanist thing. I think what puzzles people, we don't have a revealed text in
Right.
any pagan path. You know, we have inspired writings. I've written inspired writings, you know, but we don't have anything that we say, oh, the gods told us this. And I had somebody, a Holocaust survivor, in fact, in front of a group one day turn to me and say, where do you get your morals anyway? And
Hmm. Hmm.
I wanted to say, well, where do you get yours? Where did you get them before the Torah was written, for example? And so I wanted to toss that back to you, Pat. What would you have said? I mean, I didn't have to say anything there. We were on a podium together, but what would you have said? Because you've probably had to answer that, haven't
Do
you?
you need religion to be moral? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Of course not. That's what humanism is all about. Uh, Let me introduce you a little bit to Unitarianism by telling you like two of our principles. The first one was, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. And so that's one of the reasons I read these principles and realized I could be a Unitarian. They could also be principles for humanism, which is what you were talking about, because humanists, don't believe in a sky god. They do not believe there's anybody up there pulling the strings. Not even they're not. Most of them are not even deists. They don't believe in the existence of any personal God. And so you have to have somewhere to get your morality. And believing, for example, the golden rule is the only universal religious principle. If you read Kohlberg and people like that in academics, he went across all the religions in the world and looked to see what they had in common. And there's only one principle they have in common, and that's the golden rule. And
That's
so,
if you've got a written text.
yeah, but we have no written text. I mean, a revealed religion like Christianity, of course, they do have their scriptures, and Jews have scriptures, and so does Islam.
Many
We have
people,
no,
yeah.
and neither does humanism. But this thing, they have values, and that's where I get my values, I guess. The inherent worth and dignity of every person, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning is the other one that I really like. And the interconnectedness of all the creatures on the earth. So we pledge to take care of the earth. So our morality, there's seven things that's stated there. It sounds like the Ten Commandments, doesn't it? Well, that it's a religion. It's how to live your life and make it better for yourself as well as everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's part of it. And like I say, a lot of us are atheists. I'm an agnostic because as I've gotten older, I've realized there are other ways to know stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there are values. Religion brings me community. I don't, I'm not a Unitarian because of their beliefs, because I agree with everybody at that church. It's because I want a community that supports my values.
Yeah.
That's how I got there.
That free and responsible search for meaning, it has always been important to me because that's what I started doing for. I had read most of the books on the 100 shelf of the public library by the time I was about 12, and I didn't always understand it, but I had read some Blavatsky, I had read some of the Vedas, the Upanishads, lots and lots of stuff. But of course, all the paranormal stuff was there too. So originally, at that tender age, I got caught up in what's really going on. I wanted to know the scientific basis for paranormal phenomena. And there had been some things in my family, and I've had things happen since then. It took years for me to say, you know, it really doesn't matter. It's okay. Whatever it is, it is. And there's lots of things we consider scientific now that would have been considered voodoo or witchcraft 500 years ago. So, you know, I don't have to understand everything. But that's what pulled me in and fired up my curiosity about what did life mean? What was this all about? And why was I here?
Do you think, what do you tell people about morality and religion? Do you think you've got to be a religious person to be moral?
No, 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 no. Otherwise, we would have none of the great philosophers who wrote about values and so-called morals. I mean, isn't that where a lot of our Western values come from? In fact, I had a moment years ago as a pagan when I thought, gosh, I really have to admit that I got a lot of my values from my Baptist grandmother. Because she was the one that taught me you don't cheat people, you don't lie, you're kind, you treat everybody the same. And I thought, okay, this stuff is coming to us one way or another. It's not exclusive to any one or two or four religions. At least that's the way I see it.
That's one thing I forgot to mention about Unitarians. One of the things that drew me was because I grew up in the heart
Thank
of
you.
racism in the 60s in Birmingham, Alabama. Um, I was acutely aware of what was going on with race from the time those little
Yeah.
girls were bombed until until now. And the Unitarians they're social activists.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they are, I mean, that's what they, doing good in the world, making a difference in the world is the whole reason. If you had 10 Unitarians standing up telling you why they became a Unitarian, that would be mentioned because they think that they can work as a Unitarian to make the world better.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very socially active, social justice.
That's something that that whole UU movement has in common with the pagan movement in America. Now, in um, England, it started with Gerald Gardner in the 40s and 50s, and his sort of constructing, I'll say reconstructing, because we don't know that he was reconstructing anything, but he kind of pulled elements from ceremonial magic, from the Masons, stuff like that from Aleister Crowley, and he put together this witchcraft model, which has served many, many, many people well for a long time. Um, but that was its own thing. In fact, the leading scholar in England, who's actually on TV fairly often, Ronald Hutton, he says it's the one religion that England gave the world. But by the time all of that began to come over to America, it got here right in time for the peace movement, the environmental movement, and the feminist movement. So it's really hard to tease those things out. A lot of the old um, pagan leaders in this country were West Coast activists. Uh, One of the professors who's passed on, who was on my faculty, spent years at Berkeley as a professor helping people write their conscientious objector papers. But on the other hand, then you had, if you've ever heard of the Wiccan Circle at Fort Hood, Texas, that President Bush years ago got in sort of a tug of war with, and he lost. That was a military group. And there is a worldwide military group that started with Americans and Germans and Dutch in Europe on bases there. Sacred Well Congregation has ministers and congregations and circles and what the military calls distinctive faith group leaders, things like that, all over the world. So we are much more of a blend now than we ever were in the past. But that activism is still there. In fact, right now we've got pagan groups that are meeting every week to try and figure out how do we respond now to, without getting into politics, but shall we say, to the unrest in our world today.
You're telling me stuff I didn't know about pagans. Thank you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know much. I thought that it was a bunch of witches that sat around and lit candles. I just I had very little association with pagan groups. Only our church has, well, you know this, Holly, has a
Mm-hmm.
small pagan group, and
Mm-hmm.
so a long time ago I started to go into one of them, and it wasn't my cup of tea. It was
Mm-hmm.
very woo woo.
Mm-hmm. You
That was
know,
back in the 80s. That was in the 80s.
yeah, I think paganism is not unlike Unitarians in that as you have your own free search for meaning, you may develop your own
Hmm.
ways of
Hmm.
practicing that meaning and putting a shape on it. For me, I didn't have to be an ancient Egyptian or know everything. I didn't have to recreate everything back then, but those that religious framework, it became just that, it became a framework for my own spirituality.
Yeah. Like I was telling you, one my favorite curriculum at my church is called Building Your Own Theology.
Ah,
And it's because you do, when you come to the Unitarian Church, they tell you, we're not going to offer you a theology. You have to look at at everything you know and everything that you want to consider and build your own. So
mm-hmm.
one of our curricula is called Building Your Own Theology.
Okay, I've heard of that. Well, that was another thing that was a real turning point for me when I broke away from Christianity. And again, Christianity is a perfectly good religion. Jesus is a perfectly great person. God, whatever he is to you.
Oh yeah, if people would only follow him, that'd be great.
Well, at any rate, I had it was not until I had been going to the UU for a couple of years that something happened to me, and I realized that I had not yet let go of this feeling that I had to get it right and worrying. No, I didn't worry. How can I say this? There came a point when I realized it was okay not to believe that Jesus was God. Nobody was going to strike me down. I didn't know I even still had that in me,
Well,
mentally,
it took me
intellectually.
13 years. Don't apologize. I mean, it
Yeah,
was 13 years before I was ever even considered religion again because I
yeah,
felt so much guilt. Oh my God, I'm going to hell. So yeah.
right. And I mean, like I said, I really, it took breaking away for me to be able to turn back around years later. And now I think the Beatitudes, lots of the Gospels are beautiful. I can read them and I can hear what the man was supposed to be saying. Of course, after I've done a lot of scholarly research now, I know that almost all of that was already out there in text going back several hundred years. But back then, you didn't have such a thing as plagiarism. You know, if a disciple or an apostle wanted to write a book and say that um, it was one of Paul's letters or a gospel of Jesus, the intent was to get across the message. It wasn't a copyright kind of thing. So it was very interesting for me to find out. I have not found anything in the Gospels that Jesus is said to have said that was not already written somewhere long before he could have ever have lived.
That's right.
But I don't always talk about that because um, I don't want to cause that to be a disappointment for somebody else. I want them to
See,
just
that's the
think,
reason
okay,
you're a minister and I'm not.
I,
Just,
yeah,
I
I do.
can't do that.
Well,
But you do it
I,
very well.
I want to respect where people are, but I think the point I want to get across by sharing that is that after I quit worrying about whether this person ever existed or not, everything just came alive to me again. And now, when I do return to read the Bible once in a while or look up something, there's deep beauty there for me. And whereas before I might have been more consumed with how to make my life a better example and how to serve Jesus better and that kind of thing. But anyway, that's off on somebody else's religion. We're here to talk about paganism and humanism, aren't we? I want to open it up and see if anybody out there has questions you want to bring up or talk about. And remember that the rules with our group are that you can only say what you believe. You can't tell somebody else that your belief is better than theirs. And I'm trying to do controls at the same time. And to be nice. So who would like to raise a question? Jen?
Trying to figure out how to unmute myself.
We can hear you.
Thank you. Pat, I had forgotten. I'm not sure if I knew that you grew up in Birmingham. You remember I grew up in Birmingham as well.
Oh, really?
I was in the West End High School my junior year that it was integrated. And that was such a rude awakening to what was really going on in the world. So I was happy when I could got old enough that I could leave Birmingham as well. It was
Yep.
a brutal, brutal time.
Yeah, it really was. It really was.
Yeah. So I was,
I'll never forget when those four little girls were killed.
oh,
I
I,
had
I
just,
still carry I've got a sign I carry in my car with their names on it
oh, wow.
because they were only couple years younger than me. So
Yeah.
that just hit me
Well, I
hard.
had just started college. It was my first year of college, and my roommate and I went to see the church about a week after we came back from, I went to the University of Alabama. So we came back to see it. And I just remember breaking down in tears. I couldn't believe it. And
Yeah.
it was just, and that, I think that was what sealed the deal for me. I said, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah. It took me many years to realize why my parents moved after the junior year. It's because they didn't want me going to a school that was had black people.
I didn't
I'm
know
like,
you
what
went to
the?
West End.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
where I went.
wow.
Did you know Miss Halfling? She was a science teacher. And there was Miss
No,
Callan, she was the math teacher. And Miss Martin was the English teacher. God, I still have some good memories of the academics, but high school was miserable for me, like it
yeah,
was for a lot of people that were academic.
bad memories. Very
Yeah.
bad memories all around. So,
I
But I'll
remember
tell
when you
you,
went on that tour back there, Jen, and you said
yeah, that
it
was
was healing for you.
2007, 2008. I don't remember exactly.
you
But
went
yeah,
on a tour?
yeah, the UU had social committee or something.
Forgive me, somebody
Good
just
grief.
died. Hello?
Um,
Go ahead, Jen.
the UU had, I don't remember what it was called, social committee, but they had a tour of the civil rights journey. They said it will change your life. And I scoffed. I said, you should have lived there.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
took the tour and it was amazing,
I
very healing.
Yeah, I guess I couldn't go back. I have not been back to Birmingham but once in the last 10 years, and that's because my cousin of mine still lives there. But I was the very first job I had when I got out of high school. I watched Martin Luther King at the courthouse, and all the little kids and the women that they turned the fire hoses on. I watched Bull Connor. And that's when I really did have my epiphany. That's when I thought, my God, this is awful. This is wrong.
Yeah, and
And it's
I couldn't say anything at home. I knew I didn't dare.
yeah, yeah.
So, and the Baptist church, oh, good grief. So,
Yep,
anyhow,
yep,
we
yep.
can talk about that at some point, but I wanted to say,
God,
wow,
it's a small world. I can't believe I know somebody that went to West End. Okay.
I know that's surprising. So, thank you, Pat, for sharing that.
Sure, sure. I don't know what happened to Holly, but does anybody else got anything, any questions or observations or whatever? They, gosh, you guys, you got all the answers? That's great.
Well, if they have the answers, they need to share them.
Yes, people are being very quiet. I see Holly's chair.
Yeah. So,
Trying to see who else is here. Can I call on somebody?
go for it. If they don't want to answer, just that's okay.
Oh, let me see. Look, Cheryl's had the nerve to put her picture up there. Cheryl, what you think? What you thinking?
I Can you hear me?
Barely.
Okay, let me turn it up.
Yeah, turn the volume up.
Okay. So I had a question for Holly, but she's not at her or at her screen.
Yeah,
I was wondering if you have any morning, excuse me, morning rituals. Like I kneel down to pray at the beginning of the day. So does she have something that inspires her for the day that she does? Or
she.
you can answer that as well.
I
Well, I'm a
can
runner,
answer.
so I go out and exercise first thing in the morning, and really that helps me more than anything because it doesn't solve all your problems, but it makes your mood a lot more even. And so meditation, listening to meditation music, and exercise is mine. Do you have one, Cheryl, that you do?
I just like to kneel down and pray and review what I have to get done and ask for strength to get it done and move along.
These days, that's a really good question. What were you about to say, Jen?
I'm kind of go under the pagan umbrella, and I think all of us have something. Meditation's a big part of mine. I have, my sort of routine things I read or not getting. I need to come join you, Pat. I need to get back to exercising. But yeah, I think as a pagan, I could say everyone has their own method or thing they do to kind of stay centered and grounded.
Anybody else have any morning rituals they'd recommend?
Um,
No. Yeah,
in-
go ahead.
yeah, rituals that we at Brahma Kumaris follow the rituals that we believe in the time, which is a time of nectar, um, time of which we call as very pious time, that is morning, 4 o'clock. So we get up and do meditation 4 o'clock in the morning. So 4 to 4:45. And
So what is it about 4 o'clock? You said there's something special about 4 o'clock.
yeah, 4 o'clock is a time of dawn, as we say that it's a transition from night to morning. So when
Oh,
there is a time of the transition, the nature is very quiet, and like all the evils, like all the negative energy or people are usually sleeping. So when you're meditating around that time, then you are easy to connect with the source, and you can experience the silence because the vibrations and the in the universe is very much settled at that point. And then since it's a time of transition down, time of down, or we call it as a time of nectar, um, uh, which is very very powerful. So what effort you put in the afternoon will be less if you get up in the morning and meditate 4 to
wow.
4:45.
That is
Yeah.
beautiful. I've never
Yeah.
heard that about 4 o'clock. And
Yes.
you actually get up at 4 o'clock every morning.
Yes, I do. I get up
Wow.
at 3:30.
I
Yeah.
never heard that. That's a beautiful ritual.
Yes, yes. And so it's like when you start, it's like putting your train on the track early in the morning. And so throughout the day, then you have the guidance, you are guided, you are regulated from your mind that about your way of thinking that we all try, right? Think good, be nice to people, and so many virtues and powers that we want to experience throughout the day. So we receive that during the meditation in the morning. And yeah.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. I want to read up on that. That's a beautiful ritual.
Yes, yes. I would like I can maybe sometimes I can share little more about about this time and the significance of that time, why it is so important.
Holly, Jen was just asking about morning rituals, and that's what we're
Uh-huh.
talking about.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
saw that Cheryl had put a question in the chat box too. I want to apologize. A friend of ours, Jen, that was Rick.
I'm so
His wife
sorry.
just died, and
Oh,
I
God.
looked down and it was him. And when I picked up, he was crying. And anyway,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just I do not make a habit of being in a program and running away.
No, we knew it was probably that's awful.
Um, I, Let me know if this is interrupting the flow. Should I answer your question, Cheryl? Did, is this, am I interrupting
Yes.
anybody else's thought?
No,
Uh,
Tony was just sharing what she does, and it was very
yeah.
inspiring. So go ahead.
Since we're recording this, I'm looking forward to going back and seeing that myself. Yeah, I was anxious about that for years, and I've tried different things. And you know how it is for all of us. It's hard to make a habit out of anything,
Hmm.
or at least us lazy Western Americans. And COVID is when it really took for me. We have a little kind of what we call our sunroom with a bay window that looks out into the woods in the back, and I got where I was lighting a candle, a little glass enclosed lamp every night, and just speaking to all the souls I knew who were leaving the earth and recognizing, that they were passing. I mean, it was, y'all remember, that was a hard time. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know what was going on. All we knew was that a lot of people were dying, not just in this country. And then about that time, I just thought, I don't care what people think. This is my home, it's my religion, and I am a polytheist. So we set up my altar on the main, like, there's a sort of like a fireplace thing with a big wide mantle in the living room, and that's where our altar is now. And all my gods are lined up in there. And so after that, I started just keeping a little dish of water on the altar, and I take that little dish out on the front porch every morning, no matter what the weather's like, and I do my own personal invocation of peace and abundance for all of us, safety, health, wisdom, and compassion. And I just imagine that embodying itself in my home and my neighborhood, and pour out the water as like a blessing. And then I go put the water on my altar, and I say good morning to the gods. And I have another little altar that's my particular goddess I'm dedicated to. So it's almost like a little shrine for Sekhmet. And I light a candle and say a prayer to her. It's not terribly formal, but that's what I've been able to stick with. Pagans often say it's not about belief, it's about practice. And it took me a long time to understand that. You've heard that, hadn't you, Jen? And Mello, you too, probably. And I think there's something to that. And it's kind of like the community you talked about, Pat. There's something about those things we do, again, that create that shell or frame for us. So that's my answer, Cheryl. Cheryl, do you have a morning practice?
Yes, I believe that what I do, my husband and I, we kneel down and pray
Mhm.
and just ask for blessing on the day, and that we can get through whatever the challenge might be that we're working on that day.
Mhm.
And then we say our own individual prayers as well. Just kneel down there at the bed,
Mhm.
and off we go and have our day, and say a million other prayers in the meantime as we need them during the day.
Right. Right. Thank you. Anita, I'm drawing a blank. You're in the upstate, right? Maybe not.
I am. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
I
okay.
came in late, so
Yeah, that's all right.
I just didn't turn myself on.
No, and you
But
don't have to, but I wanted to give people a chance if they wanted to.
yeah, we met at a symposium earlier
Yes.
in the year. I sat with you. Yeah, and it was such a delight to meet with you. And I'll say, now that I've got my sound turned on, my condolences. I'm so sorry about your friend. But yeah, in terms of what I do in the morning to add to the conversation, um, and I'm a UU, and I'm just kind of real comfortable with uncertainty and not knowing. But I get up and walk.
every morning. Since my husband died in May of 24, my feet hit the asphalt. That's what I do. And I haven't stopped. And I live in a community that has a lake, so I get to walk around the lake and I get to see the lake. And it's very beautiful scenery. I feel blessed that I came to live in this neighborhood right before he died, so that I'm all set. And it was kind of my way of getting back to life, getting back to the new me. And I, continue to honor that ritual. And then I read something meditative as well to kind of put my mind in a good frame of mind. Right now, I'm going back through my science of mind readings, religious science, because that's something throughout the years, one of the religions that has meant a lot to me. I guess I think of myself as a UU first, because I think the basic principles and the basic sources are all one needs to get started with, and then add on what feels good at the point. But I meet with the humanist and I meet with the mystics. They each represent probably my rational mind and my intuitive mind, which I'm trying to pull together, which sometimes fight each other and which sometimes beautifully integrate. But I think I have a lot of rituals or habits in my life, and a lot of them are exercise and how I go with that, because it's movement that means a lot to me and puts me in a good frame of mind and helps me see things differently. And I've followed some of my UUs in Landrum and become much more integrated into nature. But I also realized it's at the same time that's one of the things that my husband and I did for fun, and that I also did with my father, was to be in nature a lot. So, I've kind of picked that back up now, and I have, um, hiking buddies as well. But first thing in the morning is my walking, and then reading something meditative before I turn on that awful news.
Yeah.
And, my mind starts to slip into something else. And I might also, after, reading something meditative, find some music that, keeps me in a good frame of mind as well.
Anita, which UU church do you go to?
I go to two. It's like a candy store. At first, I thought I had to. At first, I thought I had to decide. And for months, I was just tearing myself apart, going, I've got to choose Landrum, South Carolina, or I've got to choose Spartanburg, South Carolina. One is very small, has about 30 something members, and about 50 something in terms of members and friends. And the people are between 60 and 92. So you can imagine. And for
Yeah.
me, it's a friendship community. And I'm going, people, I'm trying to grow spiritually here. And they go, we're just friends.
Just friends, though, that's everything.
I didn't
But
know Landrum had
it's been
one.
I thought I was working on them, but they've been working on me. And I recently stood still and said, you know what? I honor that. I mean, I really did just join them this past Sunday, and something happened. I mean, I have been so active and so busy with them and doing so much, but just the act of going up front and joining them and having them, all repeat what they were supposed to say, and then every last one of them hug me. I feel different this week. I feel as if I'm really a part of them. But then when I go to Spartanburg every other week, because Landrum only meets 2 Sundays a week, and I'm going, people, that's not enough. So I go to Spartanburg otherwise, and they are huge and dynamic and wonderful. And I was at my covenant group tonight. I now belong to two covenant groups because I like that small group scenario. And in that covenant group, I'm going to be the new one. I'm going to be a co-facilitator. So yeah, life is becoming too full, and I've got to start to set priorities. There are just so many wonderful things to do.
Oh, be careful,
But
Anita. Pretty soon you'll be in committees, and then you'll be president of the board, and then you are hooked.
Yep.
I think I already am at Landrum, and I'm getting too involved at Spartanburg as well. But the vice president talked to me at we all went to lunch together, every
Mhm.
last blooming one of us after I joined. Is so nice. And the vice president talked to me then. He said, Anita, we are not going to use the same person for our board member at large. And I'm wondering, and I said, you know what? I've been saying no, 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 but I'm already pledging like crazy. I'm already working like crazy. And, some people even said, there are four of you that if you leave, this place will not exist. And I was one of them. I'm going, oh my gosh. And so I said, if you all ask me to be the board member at large, I would.
Oh,
I
goody,
work.
we got another one. We got another one.
I'm already doing so much that it's just, I feel like that would be the legitimacy. And I like that role because I feel like I'm an advocate and I've started some adult education with them because they didn't have any. And for me, it's, I did a survey and go, I want to know what you all want. Your board needs to know what you want. This needs to be about you, not what a small group of people decide. So, and in the same way that I advocated for my students in higher ed, I like to advocate for, well, what does everybody need? And let's see if we can put that into place for everybody. And let me just share real quickly and then I'll hush. I had the wonderful experience of taking one of the members who was in her 80s to the Kings Mountain preservation burial site. She had wanted to go. And that was absolutely lovely and wonderful. So the director of that preservation burial site is going to be our next speaker. We have a fifth Sunday, and so we always have a speaker. And right now we're using that as our time for adult education. So I'm really excited. And a lot of people have said, yes, 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 we want to hear about that. And I had everything in place, but this 80-year-old woman has now got me started to rethinking, what I want to do with my body, maybe let it decompose like it's supposed to naturally. I just like the idea. Yeah. So I'll put
We
a
have a
plaque where my
memorial
family
garden,
is.
or I would do that.
Mhm.
I said, we have a memorial garden that my husband's buried in, and so that's where I'll be buried. My urn, not me, but otherwise I would go for the natural burial. I think that's really the way to
Yeah.
go.
Well, I've got a spot with all my family as well, and I think I'll just put a plaque between my brother and my sister that has some kind of little poem and go, I'm down the road.
She's not here, yes.
She down there.
It occurs to me that there's people here that might like to know. I don't want to sound like I'm marketing anybody because I'm not, but a dear friend of mine just loves to walk. You were talking about walking. I put a link to his LinkedIn page there. If I find something else quickly, I'll put it in there too. But he has been on the Camino several times and he
Wow,
just
that's walking.
loves it. Yeah, his thing is the French side. I think he's done the whole thing, but he's done the whole French thing several times. And this year, for the first time, he's leading he's going to start doing his own tours, just quiet, just the walking. But he'll have everything arranged, and so you're not alone. But he's got the places to stay and the food and all that lined up. He's also going to be teaching a eco-spirituality certificate for my seminary starting in March called Rewilding the Soul. So just in case you know anybody that turns them on, send them my way. But there's Jeffrey in the chat box. We are at 8 o'clock. So I want to ask, is there anybody else who wants to pose a question? Okay. Pat, I think you and I are supposed to say, what do we wish people didn't think or understood about our religion? Is there any last words you want to throw out? Your most misunderstood characteristic?
I think it's very hard when you're in a religion that emphasizes reason and rationality for people to say what's spiritual, to find spirituality there. And the thing that the critique I hear most about you, is that we're a religion of the mind and not enough of the heart, not enough of the soul, whatever you want to call it. Um, because we don't do group spiritual stuff. We do individual spirituality. And a lot of users are like me, and that it's nature is where they find their spiritual sustenance. But we don't have many rituals, and that's why a lot of people that come from old religions are used to a lot of ritual, particularly like Catholics. And so that's probably the biggest critique that I've heard.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The biggest thing that pagans wish people understood is that we do not worship Satan, and in fact, we don't really believe in him, and that we're nice people, and that you can be polytheist and still believe that there is an all that is, and that we are interconnected. So I think Westerners, it's been hard for probably the last 1,000 years or more to conceive of the idea of polytheism rather than monotheism. We're so steeped in a monotheistic culture, so we're not as weird as you think, and
See,
we
a lot of us are
appreciate.
atheists, so we're not concerned about theism.
Well, and as I told our former atheist board member with Interfaith Partners, when he said something one day, and I said, "Has it ever occurred to you that your bias is also showing?" And I said, "You don't really know that there's nothing." And he said, "Oh, is fortunately he's younger than me." He said, "I guess you're right." I said,
That's the
"So,
reason I went from atheism to agnostics. I can't prove it, and you can't either. So, you
mhm,
might as well go with what you believe.
we're doing the best we can." Yeah. All right. Well, we have not lined up next month's program, but we'll get an announcement out. I want to thank each of you for being here and letting Pat and me share and talking with us about your
Thank you
own
for
journey,
listening.
too.
You're a very polite audience.
All right. Good night, everybody. Oh, we've got more interfaith events this week. So check the calendar on our website. It's also up on WIS and I think Fox websites, and I've been sending out emails. So there are some more things happening both here in Columbia and some other cities.
And I hear
Good night.
actually
Thank
that
you, Holly.
the weather may be a factor, so we
Yeah.
may have to watch for cancellation.
Yeah, yeah. Clyde and I are having to rethink my going down to coastal Carolina Saturday, but we'll see.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you. Good
Good
night,
night.
Thank you
everybody.
both.
Good
Take
night.
care.